Hi, I'm Joan Newcomb, and today's morning musings is Devas, Angels, Gods, and Saints. I'm doing a series of daily morning musings, and I am using my blog, Adventures in Density and Effort, as inspiration. The blog post that I'm reading from is a few years old, so what I'm doing is I'm going to read it, and if I encounter anything that I find is out of date, I've had new revelations, I'll stop myself and share that with you. And then I will also, at the very end, will do a summary with more information. Devas, angels, gods, and saints. Even in your loneliest moments, you are never alone. We have unseen help all around us. There are different names for these energies, but there are many similarities. Any are available at any time to assist you with whatever you need or desire. It's actually very simple to communicate with them. With practice, it can become more real for you. My experience of Devas comes from using the techniques of Paralandra and Findhorn. I'll stop and just let you know that Paralandra is a nature research center in Virginia where Michelle Small-Wright pioneered techniques on communicating with devas and nature spirits to help co-create with nature, both gardens and with your business. And she was inspired by a book by Dorothy McLean, who is one of the co-founders of Findhorn. And Findhorn is a spiritual community in Scotland, and I will be talking a bit more about that after the article. Devas are the unseen architects of everything. In nature, the Deva of the Douglas fir is the architect of all Douglas firs around the world. But each Douglas fir will have a nature spirit. And if you want to know more about this, I do recommend two books, The Paralandra Garden Workbook by Michelle Small-Wright and To Hear Angels Sing by Dorothy McLean, and I will put links to both of those down below. And Dorothy McLean has passed now, but I took workshops with her, and I actually had an experience at a workshop by David Spangler where she and I worked side by side in a project clearing blackberries. And she shared with me that all you needed to do was communicate to the Deva of the blackberry for the plant to release its roots, and they became so much easier to pull out from the ground. However, devas also form from intention and focus. Groups can create devas by their common connection. And there are devas of countries, schools, cities, classes, families. If you are self-employed, there's a deva of your business. It's actually of great help with formulating a business plan. Communicating with these devas can be very helpful in solving problems and staying on course, as well as creating growth and expansion from within the group. My experience of angels is more simplistic from people like Doreen Virtue and others. Rather than get into the hierarchical realms of Raphael and the like, I think of them as embodying qualities. You can connect to the angel of compassion or patience or love to bring their spiritual energies and guidance into your life. If you connect to the angel of transformation, fasten your seatbelt because you'll be in for the ride of your life. And I'm actually a trained facilitator of the transformation game, which was created at Findhorn by Kathy Tyler and Joy Drake. And this game of transformation works with the Deva of transformation. It is a very phenomenal force. So if you want to create powerful assistance in your life, just call on the Deva of transformation. Everyone has their own guardian angel, but you don't need a formal introduction from a psychic. They've been standing by your shoulder all your life, responding to your call, whether or not you've been conscious of their presence. There are many religions that have multiple gods that have different abilities and rule over different areas. Ganesha, the beloved Hindu god with an elephant head, is the lord of beginnings, also the remover of obstacles, and he's also associated with abundance and prosperity. Think how helpful he would be if you were facing an impasse on something. In Buddhism, there are a series of Taras, female deities, each with a unique aspect. White Tara is known for compassion and serenity. Green Tara is the female Buddha of enlightened activity. Yellow Tara with wealth and prosperity, and more. Reciting their particular mantra helps invoke their assistance in your life. Now, saints are pretty cool dudes and dudettes. I was raised Presbyterian, so we didn't have them, but the Catholics have cornered the market on these beneficial buddies. One of the most well-known is Saint Anthony, who can find lost things and also soulmates. A brief prayer to Saint Anthony will turn up something that's been missing for weeks. A novena, which is a prayer that's repeated over 9 days, can attract your soulmate into your life. I became acquainted with Saint Tony later in life. My feeling is that whether he actually lived and did the miracles that are attributed to him or not, because so many people around the world believe in him, he's become real as spirit. And that's the same for all saints, that they are known for particular qualities. And so you can call upon them and you can get help with these qualities, which is true of all these unseen helpers. They are energy patterns in the morphic field that have been given powers by people's belief in them. If you open your awareness to them, you connect to their energy and they can be useful to you. Communicating with any of them is as easy as having a conversation in your head. Calling anyone by name has them show up in your life. The challenge is hearing what messages they have for you. Sometimes they communicate in pictures or revelations, and you'll suddenly get a brilliant idea after talking with one. Sometimes they show up symbolically in serendipitous ways. I like to sit down with a journal and a pen and write what I think they're saying to me. And after I read it, I realize that's not something I could possibly have made up. So if you're having struggles at work, have a meditative staff meeting with the deva of the company. So if you're having struggles at work, have a meditative staff meeting with the deva of the company. You may suddenly find yourself promoted. If you're going to a family reunion, you can have a talk beforehand with your family's deva, and maybe it will be an enjoyable occasion for a change. They are all here to serve humanity with its evolution. So if you're ready for your life to make a great surge forward, why not call on one or more for assistance and see what happens? So I started actively working with devas back in, actually 1996. And I had started a wedding business, and I'd been a trained psychic healer clairvoyant since 1981. I found it really challenging to do weddings because I would be sensitive to all the guests a good week before the wedding. When I learned techniques from Michelle Small-Wright and I took on a deva of my wedding business, I suddenly found myself being able to do 2 or 3 weddings in a weekend. And actually, there was one August, I did a record number of weddings, including being flown down to California to do a wedding from Seattle. My business surged forward and made more money than it ever had. And I learned all of these things before going to Findhorn the first time, which was in the fall of 1996, after I had been doing certain things both with Paralandra and also I did a course on love that was by Eileen Caddy. And so my first experience going to Findhorn, they were in a huge growth space when I got there. So was I. And because going to Findhorn is a huge growth space. But they had just had a major conference that was a Business for Life conference. And one of the people who had come from, I believe, the Netherlands, had a company that did assessments for different companies. And they invited them to do an assessment of Findhorn, which by that time it had some growing pains. It had accelerated from being a fairly small community to being well known on the worldwide stage. This group that was used to working with corporations went and evaluated them, and they said, well, all your managers are incompetent. If you keep going the way you're going to be bankrupt in 3 years. So they went through this huge reaction to this, and they had all their managers had quit and they were in this huge flux. I saw a couple of different things, is that from a spiritual standpoint, because I'd worked for a spiritual organization for 14 years. It's the one that I went through my original 5 years of training. I know from that experience is that often you have the least capable person in a management job because it stretches them. And then the other thing is, had that company ever worked with an organization that the primary business plan was consult the Deva of Findhorn? And one thing I noticed is that it seemed to me like nobody was consulting the Deva of Findhorn, that everybody had these pet projects like reforesting Scotland and building an eco village and doing a living machine, which was processing their septic. And these were all people's pet projects, and they were actually afraid to collectively attune to the Deva of Findhorn in case their pet project was rejected. Whereas I think that if they had all aligned with the Deva of Findhorn, that everything would have become harmonious. And the other feeling I had, and I've since read some things that agree with this, is that Findhorn was started in the late 50s, early 60s by primarily three people: Eileen and Peter Caddy and Dorothy McLean. And they had all trained with a particular person in a particular spiritual modality. It feels very similar to like the mystery school that I trained in. And I did not notice that sort of training going on when I originally went to Findhorn. Eileen was actually still there. I saw her on my first day. But Peter had died a while back. So I feel like the mystery school aspect went by the wayside. And the reason why I'm doing all this or saying all this, I've been to Findhorn now 3 times, but in recent years, I felt no motivation to go. I've got other pursuits. I very heavily volunteered in another spiritual organization for 3 years and got really burned out. And Findhorn was heavily impacted by the pandemic. People couldn't visit, and they relied a lot on their visitors. And then they've had several tragedies. One of their major buildings burned down. A lot of historic connections, but there's been increasingly more of a schism as well. So they brought in an American couple to help them get back on track. So then just recently, it was announced to everyone that they've decided to sell the Clooney Hotel. Now, mind you, I'm sure it's very expensive and it was needed when they had people coming. It's an amazing place for visitors. The announcement said that they had attuned and came up with this decision. I'm sure that they didn't really attune to the Deva of Findhorn. I can see the intellectual decision that this is a behemoth. It's very expensive to run. Maybe they're out of date. Maybe they're going to decide to just do virtual conferences. Also, someone who used to work at Findhorn said, there's quite a schism between the Clooney people and the people at the Findhorn Park. And even the eco village at the park have lost the spiritual aspect of it. So it's a very corporate decision. And I feel like it's a decision that diminishes, constricts, and retracts as opposed to expand. So the amazing thing is when you focus on the spiritual and you connect to the Deva, like the Deva of Findhorn, expansion happens in unexpected ways. And I know myself when I am lined up with consciousness that I may expect my financial rewards to come from this, so I may expect my financial rewards to come from my clients. What happens is support comes in from out of left field. I've had many things occurring that are opening doors to possibilities that I never imagined. And I also didn't imagine would be happening as quickly as they seem to be unfolding. The world is changing. Some of these techniques may be old-fashioned. I know I went through a huge change 10 years after I first went to Findhorn, that I had made the commitment to teach everything I knew because I had seen in my organization, and I saw also with Findhorn, is that they weren't training people up to the same level as the founders. Some of this is difficult because the founders have been doing this for a long time. I mean, I've been doing my spiritual work since 1981. That's 40 plus years. It's going to be hard to train people up to the same level of my experience. And I just heard as I said that, but that's not necessary because people come in with their own wisdom. And what you're just doing is facilitating their wisdom with all of your knowledge. So what happened to me when I did this I started in 2006 and I started teaching everything I knew is within 9 months, all my old techniques stopped working for me. They became as out of date as dial-up was to working with the cosmic internet today. I mean, now it's just instantaneous streaming. So you need to go through quite all those steps. And I got propelled into a whole new level. It really was basically a consciousness shift to 5D. So that's actually something, it occurred to me as I've started these videos, as I'm reading all these blog posts, is that's what I'm going to be doing, is teaching everything I've know, including everything I've gained since I originally wrote these articles. But right now, that's what's unfolding. And it's a very organic evolution and one that is spiritually sustainable. In the past, I've just burned myself out, but this is a more balanced approach. And all of this feels like because I'm working with upgraded versions of my Devas. As you evolve spiritually, your Devas do need to be upgraded. It doesn't mean necessarily replacing them, but upgrading to a higher level of communication. So the thing that I found was my Devas all went from being these individuals to being more like these sparks of light, and the communication became a lot quicker and instantaneous. I had been used to having business meetings with these Devas. I would sit down in the morning and I would write out everything I'd say, and there would be like these formal business meetings with the Deva of my books and the Deva of my weddings and the Deva of my classes and the Deva of my readings and my Deva of my healings. And all of that kind of went out the window with this evolution. And the Devas just said, we'll just communicate to you instantaneously. And it's kind of like younger people going, oh, do we have to have another meeting? Can we just text? So that's what's evolving now, is a brand new level, and it's a really exciting time, and I'm looking forward to see what happens. Let me know if you've had similar experiences. Please leave comments below. I love to read your comment. If you like these videos, please hit the thumbs up to like them, and please subscribe by hitting the bell icon. In doing so, it increases the algorithm for YouTube to share these around the world to people. So it helps get the word out with this really important information. And actually, if you want to have a free sample of one of my techniques, it's called the Skybox technique. Go ahead and click on the link below. It helps give you an expanded perspective of your life and can really help solve some problems. And if you want to learn more about doing this for yourself, go to my website, joan-newcomb.com, and take a look at my coaching special. It's tailor-made just for you so that you'll work one-on-one with me, and I give you the specific techniques that'll help transform your life. Go to my website, joan-newcomb.com, and I'll see you tomorrow for another morning musing.